Guys, can we please take a minute to talk about Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead? I'm joined by Big Dave Batista. We're going to talk about Army of the Dead today, the Zack Snyder film, brand new on Netflix. It's hard to look away from Big Dave's look of anguish. It kind of encapsulates perfectly how I felt watching this film. So, where do we begin? So, Army of the Dead. Zack Snyder is a director who has got a lot of cred behind him now because he is the DC guy, right? So he's the guy that they brought in to combat Marvel and the cinematic universe. So he, obviously, his career began with the Dawn of the Dead remake of George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, classic zombie film. That film was written by James Gunn. It was not written by Zack Snyder. He was just like it was his first feature film, from what I recall. Since then, he's gone on to do 300, Watchmen, the DC stuff, Sucker Punch. That's probably the closest equivalent to this film. Like, take all that other stuff away. Like, Zack Snyder is a guy who is probably works best, and that's that's giving him a lot of credit because let's be real, I'm not a Zack Snyder fan really. 300 is good for what it is. Watchmen is good for what it is. The thing with his comic book stuff, and when I say comic book stuff, I mean the stuff that was directly adapted from graphic novels like 300 and Watchmen. He is. I think those films really highlight his lack of creativity in a lot of ways, because essentially what he did with those was just adapt the source material like frame by frame. He essentially used the graphic novels as a storyboard for it, which is it makes sense. Like, it sounds like that would be great for an adaptation, right? Because it's sort of something that's directly adapted, like no changes made. But the problem is, in order to get it down to a feature film length, you got to cut a lot of stuff out, and that's okay with 300 because it's like a dumb graphic novel written by Frank Miller. We've lost Big Dave. We're going to get him back. Don't panic, everyone. So yeah, it works for 300 because obviously that's like a really dumb graphic novel written by Frank Miller, no real substance to it. It's just kind of stupid Spartan action, which is what the film it ends up being. But with 300, you lose a lot because a lot of the stuff that made Watchmen what it was is in the nuances of being of the medium. Like, it's an Alan Moore comic. They're notoriously difficult to adapt. But anyway, those kind of things are like the reason it exposes his lack of creativity is because he sort of leans on those things and doesn't really do much with it. In terms of his visual style, he just sort of adapts the look of the comic book, like panel for panel. Like, okay, fine. Where that weakness shines is when he then goes on to make his own stuff, and like the ideas he brings to the table in terms of writing and sort of composing his own shots and stuff is not there. It's not all there. People gave him a lot of credit recently for the Snyder Cut, which is like, I haven't seen, by the way, and I haven't seen the original Justice League either, so I can't really comment on those. I did see. No, I saw Man of Steel. I saw Man of Steel, and I didn't like that. I thought it was terrible. But so I haven't seen Justice League 5-hour version because fuck am I going to sit and watch 5 hours of Justice League? Jesus Christ. Yeah, so he got a lot of credit for doing that. And people really were like, he saved it. Joss Whedon came in and he ruined Snyder's vision. Snyder is the man. And so Netflix have given him all this money to make this. and by all this money, it's actually not a huge budget. I think it was like 90 million or something. And like for a film like this, it's not a lot of money. And so they gave them all this money to make this film. And like I've dug into sort of the behind the scenes of it. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. So what is this, and why are you looking at Dave's big Dave Bautista's pained face? So Army of the Dead is a zombie film. It's not in any way linked to the George A. Romero works. It's not like a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, the Snyder version, or anything like that. It's just sort of his own zombie thing. I guess he has the rights to call it Of the Dead, because I think there's like some legal drama surrounding the like Of the Dead, like I guess, is it a trademark? I don't really know, but because like I know there was a split between George Romero and like the other guy that was involved in making Night of the Living Dead. So he's made this zombie film. The premise of the film is there's a zombie outbreak that is contained to just Las Vegas, and a guy hires this team of people to go into the city and rob a casino, while there's obviously a zombie outbreak there, because the rest of the world is fine. So money is still good. You want money still. So he hires Big Dave and his crew to go in and do this. And here's where sort of things begin to fall apart. Like, this is a film that is really sort of begins and ends at its premise. Like, the premise itself actually has a lot of potential. Like, just workshopping different ideas for how this could go in my head and with like some of my friends, like, there are so many ways that you could do this to create like a slick like heist film. You could do like a slick heist film. You could do an action comedy. You can do a zombie goof-orama. Like, you can combine all those things, which is what's so great about like the idea of the premise. Unfortunately, Zack Snyder is a guy who, for some reason, takes like the goofiest ideas and really wants to make them really serious. Like, I don't quite get it. I don't get where his mind goes with this stuff. Like, he takes these like fun premises for films and just tries to make them dark and morose. Like, he did that with Batman v Superman. I get like Batman v Superman. It's literally a who would win in a fight film. Who would win in a fight? Got a Batman or Superman? And he took that premise and made like this 2.5 hour grayscale nightmare. So I don't know. And this suffers from the same thing. Like, there's like 15 to 20 minutes at the start of this film, right? That's like a slow motion montage of zombies getting taken over Las Vegas, and that's like the fun part of the premise. Like, that's the sort of stuff that you'd want to see, and he sort of wastes all of his gags in the beginning of it, and I think that's just like, it speaks to the drastic pacing issues. Because like, if I bring this up here, I don't know if we'll be able to bring it up. So this film is 2 hours and 28 minutes, so it's basically 2.5 hours. And it uses the majority of its premise in the first 20 minutes. And it has huge pacing issues all the way through. Like, it has the basic setup. Like, it kind of follows an Ocean's 11 plot structure towards the beginning, which you would expect for, like, you know, a heist film kind of deal, where Big Dave is going around and he's recruiting his team, you know, and that kind of stuff is sort of there and it's fine. And then the heist sort of begins and it's going along and you're following it, and then it just sort of all stops for ages. Like, must be like at least an hour in the middle of this film, where it's basically them just standing around trying to, like, in this just a corridor, doing not really much of anything, just sort of having chats about stuff. and that's where like he tries to bring in like the character development and the sad character relationships and things like that are unnecessary for the premise of this film. And whilst it has all of that padding and stuff, it also just from a story structure point of view, it's just a mess. Because like you've got this huge saggy middle, which you should never have. You get rid of that, okay? If you're trying to keep it like a fun, upbeat tone, don't do that. But then he's not, because like it's all cut. The tone is also inconsistent, which we'll talk about. So the pacing, he's got this saggy middle, but also the stuff at the beginning, whilst it's the fun zombie gags, it's all front loaded in this intro that is completely unnecessary to exist. I guess like he wanted to convey the fall of Vegas in this like stylistic montage, which is fine. It kind of makes sense as an intro, but one of the things he does in it is that in the intro, like it has all of these characters, like it has Big Dave, and it has like all the other like his team of people, but because it's a montage over music, we don't actually learn anything about them. Like it cuts to like the zombie outbreak is happening, and then Big Dave is like already he's like a military guy and he's fighting zombies, and then like there's like a cut. There's like a still shot of like Big Dave holding a photo of like his relatives, and it's like he's like, oh, I'm now a sad zombie fighter man, and he's holding a photo of like him at Christmas with his family, and it's supposed to obviously what it's supposed to say is like, oh look how he's changed, but obviously we haven't had the family set up at that point. We don't know sort of who he is, he's just a guy. So like immediately you start asking questions, or at least I did, because it's not like I wasn't that engaged by it, so I started asking questions straight away. Like, okay, so is he just a guy that lived in Vegas who is fighting his way out of the city? And if that's the case, why is he like a trained military guy? Like, what is his job? Like, where did he get this team? Like, who are all these people, you know? And then, like, it cuts to, it's not just Big Dave, because it's, like, other characters as well. And it has, like, this woman character that we never learn the name of, because it's a silent montage with music. And she, like, is rescuing a kid, and I guess maybe it's her daughter, or it's some other kid. Like, again, it doesn't matter. But then she like gets gribbled by zombies, and like this is in the first like 10 minutes, so it's not really a spoiler. And she's a non-character, so she gets gribbled by these zombies, right? And Big Dave and his mates see it, and they're like, no, oh, and it's like really sad, and it's meant to be emotional, and the music's getting emotional, but we don't know. We don't know who that is. We don't know who that is. How are they related to each other? Why do we care about this? Like, it's all very trite. Like, it would work as like a short film concept, I guess. Like, tell a story with no dialogue. You know, like it would kind of work almost, but it doesn't really, because you don't know anything about any of the characters. So that's all at the beginning. And even before that, there's like a 10-minute scene of the actual zombie virus getting leaked, and there's so much focus put on this convoy and the origins of the virus, and that kind of thing is like pure terrible screenplay. Like it's a symptom of the everything has to be an expanded universe thing, because it's like you have to have the lore. Like, they must have lore. We must establish, where did the virus come from? What is the code name of the convoy that is carrying the virus? Like, you got to have all that shit crammed in there so that Billy Blogs can write on his Wikipedia, like, oh, in Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, the zombie from the beginning, his name is Zeus, and that's true. Apparently, his name is Zeus. Who gives a shit? It's a zombie. So you have all that, and then it cuts to the scene where Big Dave is being recruited for the heist. Now, you may have heard about this concept called the inciting incident. That's where basically the things in your story, like it's the moment the story begins, basically. It's what sets the character off on their path. And conventional storytelling wisdom is to begin your story as close to the inciting incident as you possibly can, whilst having it still make sense. So what you should do, if I was to go in and re-edit this film, right, I would take that first 10, how long is it? It's, I can't even scroll back. It's too long. It's too long to scroll back. So but if I was to go in and re-edit this, I would cut out that whole intro bit, get rid of it. Just get rid of it, and begin the film with Big Dave getting recruited for the job, and you can have all of that stuff exposited naturally, as the story goes on. Like, as he's being recruited, he's like, I want you to go to Vegas, and he'd be like, oh man, Vegas is a zombie shithole, and then you'd like discover, oh man, like what happened in Vegas, like be mystery. Like it would set up like interesting questions to ask instead of like really dumb ones. So that's sort of like the first hint, like even right at the beginning, that this script is a mess. And that is like before even going into the visual stuff. Like, I'm not like an expert in the visual components of filmmaking or anything like that, but like, this is an ugly film. Like, it's like I've watched my fair share of ugly looking films, and like it doesn't matter to me as much as it might some other like film buffs. I'm like not like a cinematography nerd or anything like that. I mean, look at my fucking camera setup. Like, I give a shit about good lighting and stuff, but like just some of the decisions made here are terrible. Like, what was he thinking? Like, you can see in like some of the behind the scenes stuff that I've seen where like he's talking about how he's using these special lenses that he bought, and I learned that he like spent years buying up these lenses on eBay so he could use them for this film, and he wanted to use them because they have like this weird shallow focus, but as a result of the shallow focus, like nothing ever is in focus for like more than 2 seconds, and it just like everything, like as it moves around the frame, their different parts get blurry, and it's like, what is this? Like, what am I looking at? It's hideous, and obviously because it's a Zack Snyder film, it has like the really horrible desaturated thing that he likes to do. So like where there's like no color. Almost no color in like a lot of the shots. And I think one of the funniest scenes that I found was the characters are supposed to, like, they're going through this thing that's like, it's pitch black, right? And they're creeping through this thing, so it's like a stealth bit. And they've got flashlights, so they can see the zombies. And you're a bit like, oh my god, like you gotta be careful because like it's dark, and you bump into the stationary zombies, like, they'll get you, but they can't see the light for whatever reason. So like, that's a good premise for a scene. Like, it makes sense. Like, imagine the claustrophobic stuff in Aliens where, like, it's, like, pitch black and they're going through and, like, you can't really see in the walls, like, what is that in the wall? Is it an alien or is it just, like, a gross wall? Like, it's like that kind of thing. But because of the way that it's shot, the scene is perfectly bright. Like, you can see, as an audience member, you can see everything perfectly. Like, nothing is lit purely by these flashlights. So it kind of makes it seem like all of the characters are like, they must be blind, because like, it's like, mate, I can see all of this that's happening like really easily. Like, because it doesn't immerse you in the film, because it's like, oh yeah, that's like an interesting setup, but then you're like, well, I don't really feel like I'm there with the characters, because I can see everything that's going on. So when they're just like going, oh, with the flashlights, it's like a silly play, like they're pretending that it's dark, but it isn't. So that's just weird, you know. Like the visual quality of it is not good. And I guess the last point to make is the and it goes back to the lack of creativity, right? If you look up the IMDb trivia page for this film, a lot of the trivia points people have pointed out are like, oh, this moment is a shot-for-shot recreation of this film. This character is dressed exactly like Vasquez from Aliens. This moment is exactly an homage to this moment in Aliens. And it's like, at a certain point, okay, like, and when you're doing an homage to something, it's kind of like a cheeky wink and a nod, which would work a lot more for this film if they did a better job of keeping it tongue-in-cheek, but they don't. Like, everything is taking itself very seriously for a lot of the time, with some like childish humour thrown in between. So it's taking itself really seriously, but then, just out of nowhere, it will recreate shot for shot and line for line the werewolf attack scene from American Werewolf in London, and it will follow beat for beat things from Aliens, like like it recreates the moment where Bishop, like, Ripley goes to get Newt and she comes back and Bishop is gone off the helipad, and then he like comes back and she thinks he's betrayed him. Like, it recreates that scene like 1-to-1, and it's and it's like, it's like, I get it. Like, I get that Zack Snyder, like, he clearly is like someone who loves film and like he wants to experiment with stuff, but like he's just not very good at it. And it makes, and because like there's so much homage in the film, and it takes itself so seriously, it just comes off like he's a hack that couldn't come up with his own ideas, so he just ripped off these ones. And there's all sorts of weird plot holes and just contrivances. Like, the biggest thing is that the guy who hires them to knock off the vault, he is the owner of the vault. Like, he says, oh, you know, there's $200 million in this safe, and, you know, the government's already reimbursed me for it, so I want you to go and get the money out of it, and, like, you know, you can keep 100 mil, and I'll keep 100 mil, and we'll be bandits. But they also, like, he requires them to have a safe cracker to get into the safe. Like, mate, it's your fucking safe. Do you not have the codes? Give him the codes. So weird. So weird. And there's like a character who's set up to betray the team, and they all lampshade it, and they're like, oh, don't trust him, bet he's going to betray us. And he just does. And that's another, like, his whole thing, like, moments, again, lifted straight from Aliens. Like, I was watching this with a good friend of mine, and, like, Aliens is one of our favourite films of all time, without question. And so many moments of this, we were just like, this is Aliens, bro. Like, I bet this happens. And they'll say that, like, this sort of line. And it happened flawlessly, like, 10 minutes later. It's like, terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, yeah, I hated this film. It caused me a lot of physical pain to watch it. It was quite fun ranting about it, though. So that's it. Have you seen Zack Snyder's The Army of the Dead? Let me know in the comments if you have. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, rate it. I guess rate it. Do you rate things on YouTube anymore? I don't know. Fucking like it, comment, subscribe, do all of that stuff. I'm going to try and upload more videos. I need to read a book, though, because this is supposed to be a book channel, but hey, I could talk about films too. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you when I see you next.